I'm totally loving this room. Hey, can we rearrange the living room? Of course. This is your castle now, Michelle. The eldest son and his wife are quite giddy in their high-rise condo, overlooking lush green hills and a bustling city. It might seem like a delightful scene, but it's the exact opposite. That's because this is the house where I, the younger sister, live with my parents. Don't go rearranging things without asking. You still planning on living here, Meg? 40 years old and still a leech? Jobless loser, get out. I looked to my father for support, expecting him to scold my eldest brother and his wife. But instead, man, I'd love to live with a young wife too. In that moment, something snapped inside me. I was done. Done with my arrogant brother, his annoying wife, and even my dad who was head over heels for her. All right then, take good care of mom and dad. So you're finally moving out, huh? Don't want to see your depressing face anymore, leave today. My brother and his wife seem pleased, thinking they've succeeded in kicking out their loser older sister, while looking forward to their luxurious high-rise life. Little do they know what difficulties lie ahead. My name is Meg Roberts. I'm a 40-year-old single woman. I live with my aging parents, helping with household chores and taking care of my dad. I do mostly remote work, except for the occasional business trip. I've long been troubled by my difficult father and brother. My dad has always been a philanderer, spending most of the money on himself, so we've always struggled. And because of that stress, my brother, Alan, has been abusive towards me since childhood, always making me cry. My misfortunes continued into adulthood. I entered the workforce around the same time my dad got injured and couldn't work anymore. Bad things happen in threes, and just around then, Alan stole our savings and vanished. My already frail mom had to work multiple part-time jobs while taking care of dad, so I stepped up to help. Nights when I couldn't make it home from work, I'd stay overnight at the office, and then rush home to assist in caregiving. That's how my grueling 20s went by. I often thought about running away, but if I did, my kind-hearted, struggling mom would be left alone to deal with it all. As much as I hated my dad, I couldn't leave my mom all alone. In my mid-30s, my income finally started to stabilize, giving me some financial and emotional breathing room. About a year ago, during a business trip to Idaho, I stumbled upon a wonderful new high-rise. It was a modest 12-story building, but well located near the station and a supermarket, with a senior day care center and senior salon on the first floor. The building had excellent amenities like a gym and a spa. It was an ideal place to live for the long term. The view was also great, and for $500,000, you could get an apartment on one of the higher floors with a stunning view of the natural landscape. At the time, our old single-story house back in the New York metropolitan area was falling apart due to neglect over the years. I suggested moving to my mom, and she readily agreed. My dad was initially against it, but when he found out the high-rise was near a famous tourist attraction, he changed his mind. Probably just wanted to brag to his friends. We took the plunge and moved, and our new life started off well. We signed up for day services, became acquainted with the neighbors, and even participated in local festivals. The busy yet fulfilling year went by quickly. My dad goes to the Senior Day Care Center on the first floor 3 times a week. It's a facility that frequently organizes recreational activities, and the staff take him to hot springs and tourist spots. He keeps sending bragging postcards to relatives and acquaintances. It's a bit annoying that he's spreading the word as if he bought the high-rise condo with his own money, but since it doesn't cause any real harm, I let it be. My mom is making new friends at a senior salon and participating in community events and volunteering, which seems to be fun for her. It was also an ideal environment for me to work, and it seemed like I had finally achieved a calm and ideal life. However, the peace that had finally come to me was about to be shattered again. Alan suddenly appeared at the entrance of the high-rise condo, with Michelle, the woman he had an affair with and stole from her husband. That day, the ominous sound of the intercom echoed. When I saw the figure on the intercom camera, my heart froze. Hey, I heard from a friend that you moved. Dad, that's amazing. Where did you get the money to buy such an apartment? It was Alan, my older brother, who had been out of touch no matter how many times I tried to contact him. Alan, with the top 2 buttons of his aloha shirt undone, sunglasses on, and speaking in a thuggish tone. I asked him coldly what he wanted. What do you want? Oh, it's you, Meg. I heard from a buddy that you quit your job years ago and hardly ever leave the house now, huh? Being an old unemployed loser, that's pathetic. I still couldn't forgive this brother of mine. Because of this man, my mother and I had a tough time. However, if Alan had shown any signs of remorse, I would have been able to let bygones be bygones and treat him kindly. Instead, Alan mocked me, whom he should have troubled. I became even more resolute. If you have no business here, please leave. What? I came all the way here to introduce you to my wife. Open up. Sure enough, there was a woman standing next to Alan. Honestly, I had a bad feeling about it, so I was reluctant. However, my mother said, I don't know when we'll see him next, so I want to meet her, so I reluctantly unlocked the entrance. To my mother, he must still be her beloved son, no matter what. Alan, who barged into the room, sat down heavily on the sofa as if he had forgotten about the money he had embezzled when he was young. When did you get married? Today. When Alan embraced his wife, Michelle, she boldly intertwined her arms. In front of her husband's family for the first time, doesn't she feel embarrassed or think she should be polite? But there was something more concerning. Michelle, you've only been divorced for 6 months? Yeah. I took her away from her boring ex-husband, who only had being serious going for him. Alan fought against the company to steal me away and escape. It was so cool. Michelle, who said she was 30 years old, had a face appropriate for her age, but her hairstyle and fashion were like a college student's. Moreover, she moved her body excessively and spoke in a high-pitched voice. I felt a strong aversion towards the two of them as they openly and glamorously talked about the fact that Alan lost his job due to the affair, without even trying to hide or downplay it. However, my father, who was there, was leering at Michelle with a lecherous gaze. Michelle doesn't look 30 at all. She looks so youthful, almost like she's still in her teens, doesn't she? Ah, I'm so happy to hear that. Hearing Michelle's flirtatious voice, a cold wind blew through my heart. My mother was also stiffening her expression next to me. This high-rise condo is very nice, but, Mr. Roberts, did you take on a loan at your age? My father answered Michelle's intrusive question with pride. I paid in full, so I only have to pay $100 for the management fee each month. So financially stable. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted them to leave as soon as possible, so I asked Alan. When do you plan to go home? It's already evening, so we're staying here tonight. What? It's a bit of a problem if you tell me suddenly. Didn't you book a hotel or something? I came back to my parents' house for a night. What's the problem? But we only have one spare bed. Then, Michelle blushed and wiggled as she said, I'm fine sharing a bed with Alan. Actually, I prefer that. Feeling nauseous, I took out my smartphone and immediately booked a nearby hotel. Please leave now. Alan was reluctant and grumbling, but my mother quickly handed him some cash. Stay at a hotel with this. Don't bother Meg. Then, Alan left satisfied, taking Michelle with him. Meg, I made you feel bad because I said I wanted to see Alan. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not your fault, Mom. It's only natural for a parent to want to see their child after not hearing from them for years. When I remembered the faces of Alan and Michelle, who cleverly manipulated my mother's kind-heartedness to get money from her, I felt so frustrated that I couldn't help it. That day, I fell asleep at some point while working at the living room desk until late at night. Please stop, Alan. Leave. The next morning, I woke up with a start when I heard my mother's almost tearful shout from my room. I took off the blanket that my mother must have put on me and rushed to my room, only to be stunned by the scene before me. The room was ransacked, and things were scattered all over the floor. Alan and Michelle were throwing my clothes and daily necessities into a suitcase, one after the other. "What are you doing?" As I felt the blood drain from my face, Alan smirked and said, "You don't have a room anymore. I see you have a lot of expensive clothes. I'll take some, okay?" "Stop it. Enough is enough." According to my mother, my father let Alan and Michelle into the room without asking them first thing in the morning. After Alan and Michelle closed their packed suitcases, they carried them to the living room and went out. "I really like this living room. Can I redecorate it to Michelle's taste? I want to line up all volumes of That Love Is the Wind of Early Spring here. It's a comic book that you love to read. Of course. This is your castle, after all. It would be a problem if you redecorated it without permission." Then Alan, trying not to burst into laughter, said, "You still planning on living here? You're 40 and still want to leech off us? Unemployed losers should get out." He really intends to kick me out. I knew Alan was a terrible person, but I never imagined he could be this bad. It's embarrassing as a human being to act like your father-in-law's condo is yours. What are both of you talking about? Meg is. Alan brushed off my mother, who was trying to defend me. Can you be quiet, Mom? You're the one who raised a 40-year-old woman still living with her parent. It was bad enough that he was mocking me, but to hurl such abusive language at my mother was unacceptable. I was trembling with anger but swallowed it down. There would be no point in saying anything to such a couple. They had been looking down on me from the start. I looked at my father for help. His wife and daughter had been insulted to this extent. Surely he would scold Alan, wouldn't he? However, I kinda want to live with a young wife too. My father said such a carefree thing. At that moment, the tension in my heart snapped. I was fed up with my arrogant eldest son, his silly wife, and my father who was smitten with his daughter-in-law. Well, take care of yourselves then. Finally decided to leave, huh? I don't want to see your gloomy face, so leave today. This couple seemed to be basking in the joy of having driven out his parasite younger sister, who was leeching off their parents. They seemed to be looking forward to a glamorous life in a luxurious high-rise condo, without even dreaming of the hardships that awaited them. Having been kicked out with just one suitcase, I went to the nearest local city and rented a monthly apartment. I contacted my mother and had her send the rest of my belongings there. When I called to thank her for the delivery, my mother was crying, saying she felt pathetic. Meg, you're the most filial child. And yet, your father and Alan are too cruel. But the most pathetic one is me, who couldn't stop them. Currently, unemployed Alan and Michelle are leisurely job hunting while enjoying their dream life in the high-rise condo. Michelle even says things like, since the rent is covered, I can get by with less income, so it's okay for me to be a housewife, right? It's not your fault, Mom. Besides, they will be the ones to regret it in the end. Would you be willing to help me with what I'm going to do from now on? After listening carefully to the plan I laid out, my mother said this. If that happens, Alan and Michelle and your dad will be in a lot of trouble. But I think those three deserve it. I will cooperate. Thank you, Mom. I'll send some documents over. Make sure to get a signature from Alan at the right time and send it back. Understood. About a month later, Alan, who had been silent until then, suddenly contacted. Hey, a rent demand letter came. What does it mean to pay $1,000 in rent? When I questioned Dad, he said you bought the house. Were you deceiving me? Wasn't there no mortgage? I wasn't the one deceiving, it was Dad, right? As you already know, that room is in my name, and since I paid in full, I don't have a mortgage. Then why do I have to pay the rent? I sighed. Alan had accused me of leeching off our parents. But who was really trying to leech off someone else? There's no way he could live in the house of the sister he forcibly kicked out for free. It seemed like a massive boomerang. You're living there now, right? Since you're borrowing it from me, it's only natural to pay rent. You did agree to it, right? Huh? I don't remember agreeing to anything. Oh, that's strange. I have the original lease agreement here. It has your signature on it. There should be documents at your place that you can check too. Michelle and I turned the document holder upside down, and we could hear Alan freaking out over the phone. What is this? I really did sign it. When did I sign this? I don't know. Oh, I remember now, Mom gave it to me to sign. Huh? So you signed it without checking? Are you an idiot? Shut up, you were there too, right? It was when we were getting ready to go shopping. Why didn't you stop me? You're the worst. Are you trying to blame me? I listened to Alan and Michelle arguing over the phone with a sense of satisfaction. It wasn't a bad feeling. Where's Mom? Did she become Meg's minion? It's useless. She's with me now. She won't be back for a while. What? Hey, Meg, where are you now? Who knows? I don't have an obligation to tell you, do I? Speaking of obligations, you have an obligation to pay the rent, don't you? Alan stamped his feet in frustration. Damn it! I can't afford to pay $1,000 a month. I could hear the sound of Alan angrily smashing something like a bottle. If you break the floor or walls, I'll charge you for the repairs. You devil! Just then, Michelle, who had left earlier, came running back. I found Dad's passbook while rummaging through the drawers. We should be able to manage with this, huh? 23 cents? Not even $2,300? Is there a digit missing? The two of them were in such a panic that it seemed like a comedy, and I couldn't help but hold back my laughter. There's no way Dad has any savings. The moment Dad couldn't work anymore, you took everything and ran away, remember? Thanks to that, Mom and I had a really hard time. Michelle shouted at Alan, who was grumbling in frustration. What do you mean? Michelle, I haven't heard anything about this. Ah, shut up, bringing up the past. It's easy for the thief to forget, but the victim never forgets the pain. It's convenient, isn't it? Okay, then please take care of Dad's senior daycare payments too. At my words, Alan was silent for a few seconds, as if he didn't understand what I was saying. Wait, what did you just say? The daycare payment. It used to be automatically deducted from my account, but I stopped it. So from now on, you'll have to take care of it. Isn't the daycare fee included in the condominium maintenance fee? There's no way that's the case. How naive are you? You should face reality. Bye. I hung up the phone, exasperated. After that, Alan kept calling persistently, so I set my phone to reject his calls, and it finally became quiet. Later, Alan and Michelle, unable to afford the $1,000 monthly rent, had to leave the condominium. As soon as they found out he had no money, Dad was quickly abandoned and tried to rely on Mom, but he didn't know where she was, and her cell phone number had changed. He had no choice but to rely on me. Please apologize properly for everything you've done so far. And correct all the lies you've been bragging about to your relatives in postcards. Write that you can live a good life in the condo thanks to your daughter, me. Then, I'll let you stay in the condo again. My father seemed as if his pride had been shattered to pieces, and he became very quiet. However, at the end of the day, I think it was my father who underestimated me too much. This incident must have been a good lesson for him. When I returned to my condo and took a breather, the ominous chime rang again. When I checked through the video intercom, there stood Michelle, unbelievably. Such a jerk, that man. I couldn't believe my ears when she cursed, as if she couldn't have been openly flirting and calling him Alan just a while ago. That guy cheated on me right after leaving the condo. From what I gathered from Michelle's story, after leaving the condo, Alan and Michelle moved to the city, saying that condo was too rural. From now on, we will live a sophisticated city life. It was a classic case of sour grapes. But Alan, who was dismissed for misconduct, was unlikely to find a good job. Alan was apparently picky about his jobs and remained unemployed, eventually getting hooked on playing slots. They lived in a narrow, old apartment, and Michelle started supporting Alan by working full-time as a temporary staff. However, Michelle gradually became dissatisfied with Alan, who did not do household chores and was obsessed with slots, and they started having marital quarrels every night. So, he cheated. It's karma, isn't it? What's karma? I don't understand what you're saying. I started to feel a bit sorry for Michelle. You're pretty stupid and terrible too, but my brother is even worse. What a pity. But, I regretted sympathizing with her even for a moment after hearing her next words. So, you have money, right? Pay the alimony instead. After all, it's your fault for kicking us out. The conversation was so abrupt that I didn't understand what she was saying at first. As I gradually absorbed the situation, I was dumbfounded and firmly refused. There is no reason for me to take on the alimony, and if we go back to the root cause, you guys were the ones illegally occupying my house. When Michelle started yelling again, a serious-looking man in a suit and glasses appeared behind her and looked into the intercom camera. Excuse me, I came to pick up the latest manuscript of that wind. Michelle was startled and glared at the man. Who are you? Oh, I'm sorry for not introducing myself. I am Jeff, the editor in charge of Mississippi Roberts. Today, I came to pick up the manuscript of the manga that Love is the Wind of Early Spring. After a brief pause, Michelle started screaming hysterically. What do you mean? Why is the editor of Michelle's Bible, That Wind, coming to this woman's house to pick up the manuscript? Huh? Don't tell me, huh? It is exactly what you are thinking. I revealed the truth while finding the situation amusing inside. The author of the shoujo manga That Love is the Wind of Early Spring, abbreviated as That Wind, which you have collected all volumes of, is me. It took a long time to gain recognition, but thanks to this work, which I started serializing about 5 years ago, becoming a big hit, I became known as a late-blooming manga artist. And finally, I was able to earn enough money to buy the condo. So, That Wind is a very important work for me. Michelle was speechless at first, then started to tremble gradually. So, some of the money I was happily spending to buy the latest volumes flowed to you as royalties. And all those heart-throbbing scenes were drawn by you, and I was being manipulated. It was understandable that Michelle was confused, as the author of the comic book she revered as a Bible was the sister of the man she was currently hating. Michelle seemed to be filled with anger and shame, screamed "Gah!" and ran outside. And she never came back again. Later, I heard that Michelle and Alan got divorced. It seems that the person Alan had an affair with dumped him as soon as she found out he was an unemployed gambling addict. Now, I heard through the grapevine that Alan is making ends meet by working a live-in job. It seems to be a manual labor job that he used to be picky about and avoid. Since Alan has not contacted me, I do not intend to contact him either. If he contacts me, it must be for some ulterior motive, so I hope things stay this way for the time being. My parents and I returned to our former lives. The only slight difference might be that my father doesn't complain as much as he used to. He used to grumble about trivial things, but now it seems he feels inferior to me. By the way, the other day, my editor, Jeff, brought me the results of a reader survey for That Wind. It seems that it won the first place in popularity among the serialized comic books in the magazine. I decided to continue drawing the comic book for my readers and for myself. In this beautiful nature visible from the condo.